Stepping into the wilderness often feels safe, but for some hikers, the trail becomes their last known path. In remote forests and mountains, people have vanished without leaving a single clue, their disappearances sparking years of fear and unanswered questions. These are not legends or campfire tales. They are real cases that remain unsolved to this day. In this video, we'll uncover 5 of the most disturbing disappearances of hikers in America, where each story is stranger and darker than the last. It was February 26, 2015, on the island of Oahu, Hawaii. Dalen Mokpua, an 18-year-old senior from the Big Island, was staying with his grandmother in Waianae. That morning, he set out for a hike that many had attempted but few dared to finish. His goal was the top of the Haiku Stairs, better known as the Stairway to Heaven. The trail was closed, unstable, and dangerous. But for Dalen, it was a challenge he wanted to take. He never returned. Dalen grew up in South Kona and attended Ke'ekula o Ehunuikai Malino, a Hawaiian immersion school. Friends described him as curious and adventurous. He loved hiking, the beach, photography, and music. His grandmother remembered him as a boy who sang and danced hula. He dreamed of becoming a pastry chef and planned to attend culinary school after graduation. He was also one of 7 children and deeply connected to his large family. The Haiku Stairs have a long history. Built in 1942 during World War II, they were part of a U.S. naval radio station. Nearly 4,000 metal steps rose along the Ko'olau cliffs to a summit almost 2,800 feet high. The climb offered wide views of Oahu, but the structure was treacherous. Engineers even brought in high scalers to pin steel into the cliffs. By 1943, the station was complete, and the stairs remained in use for decades before being closed to the public in 1987. Over the years, landslides and storms left them unstable. Still, hikers snuck in, drawn by the forbidden climb. In 2015, the trail was one of Hawaii's most infamous illegal hikes. Dalen's grandmother warned him not to go. She reminded him that it was closed and unsafe. He didn't listen. The day before, he posted a photo of the stairs on Facebook, writing, "Stairway to Heaven, hiking this insane hike tomorrow, wish me luck." Friends cautioned him that it was illegal and risky. One said he could be fined. He brushed it off, saying the fine wasn't serious. Another reminded him of a landslide earlier that month. Dalen said he would take the Moanalua Valley back route instead, which was much more dangerous, involving steep muddy ridges and narrow ledges. At 6 a.m. on February 26th, he left for the hike. He wore a white long-sleeve shirt, black surf shorts, slippers, and a red backpack. His last Facebook post that morning read, "And the hike begins." He sent photos to his family during the climb. One image later caused controversy. In that photo, his relatives noticed what looked like a man's head behind branches. It was blurry but clear enough to suggest someone else was on the trail. The family believed this meant Dalen wasn't alone. Police released the image through Crime Stoppers, but the man was never identified. By that evening, Dalen stopped sending updates. When he didn't return the next day, his grandmother reported him missing. The Honolulu Fire Department searched for 3 days with helicopters and ground teams. They focused on the last ping from his phone but found nothing. Just as the search was about to end, 2 hikers reported hearing someone yell, "Help me," from a ridge too dangerous to reach. Crews extended the search, but no one was found. On March 3rd, the official search ended, though family and volunteers continued for weeks. Helicopter pilots even donated their time, but bad weather and fog made it nearly impossible. Some volunteers claimed they heard cries for help that didn't match rescuers' voices, but no trace of Dalen was ever found. Theories soon formed. Authorities believed he slipped and fell along the unstable ridges, possibly buried by a landslide. His family believed he may have met someone on the trail, the mysterious man in the photo. Others thought the man was just another trespassing hiker avoiding fines. Still, none of this explained why nothing was ever recovered. Today, the Haiku Stairs remain closed. In 2023, a group called Friends of Haiku Stairs filed a lawsuit against Honolulu to stop their planned demolition, which is estimated to cost over $4 million. They argue that the removal will harm endangered species and drive hikers to even more dangerous routes, like the one Dalen took. For his family, those debates mean little. They are still left with questions. Did he fall? Was the cry for help real? And who was the man in his photo? Dalen Mokpua was 18 years old when he disappeared into the mountains of Oahu. A decade later, the mystery remains. It was January 13, 1980, in Cochise County, Arizona. Paul Fugate, a 41-year-old park ranger, reported for duty at Chiricahua National Monument. The monument was remote, filled with tall volcanic spires, balancing rocks, and winding canyons. That afternoon, Paul told a seasonal employee he was stepping out to check the nature trail. If he wasn't back by 4:30, she should lock up without him. Wearing his ranger uniform, he headed toward the faraway ranch area. But Paul never came back. He was never seen again. To understand his disappearance, it helps to know who he was. Paul Braxton Fugate was born on September 2, 1938, in New York. He graduated with a biology degree in 1963. After school, he considered working at Dugway Proving Ground, a military site for chemical tests, but chose the National Park Service instead. In 1964, he married Dodie, and by 1965, he was stationed at Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. Later, he transferred to the Navajo National Monument in Arizona. Paul was not the typical ranger. He had a rebellious streak, long hair, and a mustache. Supervisors described him as unprofessional, even writing that he looked like a hippie. Still, Paul was passionate about teaching visitors, creating guides, and answering questions. In 1970, Paul and Dodie moved to Chiricahua. But by 1971, he was fired over grooming violations and attitude issues. With the help of a lawyer, he fought back. After a 5-year battle, he was reinstated in 1976. Dodie stayed in Tucson for her photography career, while Paul lived alone in a cabin at the monument. Their marriage was open, and Paul had affairs, including one with a park aide named Becky Orozco. On the day he vanished, Paul left his radio and keys at the station. At his cabin, he left his wallet, $300 in cash, valuable weapons, a camera collection, and the truck he was restoring. It didn't look like he planned to leave for good. That evening, when he didn't return, the seasonal employee alerted Superintendent Ted Scott. By the next day, search and rescue teams were out. Crews, helicopters, and dogs scoured the monument, rappelling cliffs and searching canyons. No trace was found. Then a possible lead emerged. A Park Service volunteer, Dick Horton, and his wife reported seeing Paul in a green pickup truck flanked by 2 men. Under hypnosis, Horton described one man with a Kenny Rogers-style beard and another in a green jacket. Paul, he said, looked sad and dejected. Investigators debated this, but vehicle tracks and signs of a scuffle near Faraway Ranch added weight to the claim. Theories soon formed. Some thought Paul left voluntarily, but this conflicted with all he left behind, including an unfinished life insurance application. Others claimed he ran off with a pregnant girlfriend, though no proof existed. The most alarming theory was that he encountered black market dealers. At the time, Cochise County was a growing smuggling corridor. Years later, in 2014, a ranger was attacked in the same area by a suspected trafficker, and in 2015, human remains tied to missing persons were found nearby. Suspicion also fell on Dodie. She didn't come to the monument until 4 days later, saying she stayed home in case of a ransom call. Investigators never searched her house or confirmed an alibi. When she did arrive, she found out Paul's girlfriend had been pregnant but ended the pregnancy. She also discovered a check suggesting she and Paul had plans to reunite later that year. The Park Service added to the controversy. They first offered rewards and partial salary payments to Dodie, but later ruled that Paul had abandoned his job, demanded repayment, and even deducted money from his retirement. It wasn't until 1986 that he was declared deceased. Over the years, reports surfaced of Paul's sightings, even a claim in Oregon in 1983, but nothing was confirmed. In 2018, the Park Service raised the reward for information to $60,000. Yet after all this time, no answers have come. On January 13, 1980, Ranger Paul Fugate walked out of the visitor center and disappeared. Decades later, no body, no personal items, and no clear evidence have ever been found. Only theories, speculation, and a chilling witness account of a ranger slumped in a truck remain. 45 years later, the disappearance of Paul Fugate is still unsolved. It was September 14, 2024, in Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming. Austin King, a 22-year-old seasonal worker from Minnesota, set out on a solo 7-day backcountry trip. He was dropped off by boat at Terrace Point just below Eagle Peak, the tallest mountain in the park at over 11,000 feet. For Austin, this was meant to be both an adventure and a challenge. Austin was no stranger to physical endurance. In June 2022, he had completed a triathlon that required swimming, biking, and running. He finished in 1 hour and 33 minutes and proudly shared his accomplishment online. By the summer of 2024, he was working inside Yellowstone, spending his free time exploring the park. Just weeks before his trip, he had posted photos of Wyoming's landscapes, including waterfalls inside Yellowstone. His plan was clear, a week-long solo trek, returning by September 20th. But soon after heading out, weather conditions became severe. Mid-September in Yellowstone often brings cold, unpredictable storms. Austin faced dense fog, rain, sleet, hail, and powerful winds. On September 16th, 2 days in, Austin crossed paths with a backcountry ranger at the Howell Creek cabin. This wasn't part of his original route. He told the ranger he planned to stay at campsite 6D8 before climbing Eagle Peak the next day. On September 17th, he reached the summit and called his family. The call was unsettling. He described extreme weather and admitted he had gone off route, climbing dangerous cliffs without ropes to reach the top. Later, searchers found a note he left at the summit. In it, he wrote about the fog, the wrong path, and that he had free-climbed too many cliffs. He ended with, "Life is beautiful, get out and live it," signed with his name and a smiley face. That was his last known message. When September 20th came, Austin never returned to the Yellowstone Communications Center. The next day, search and rescue began. Crews found his belongings and a campsite near Howell Creek, but no trace of him. Search efforts grew quickly. Helicopters, drones, dogs, and 20 ground personnel combed the area. Austin's father, Brian King Henke, raised money through GoFundMe to support private searches, sharing updates filled with both hope and pain. His grandfather, Richard King, also pleaded publicly, describing the large-scale search already underway. Despite these efforts, nothing more was found. By October 2nd, officials shifted from rescue to recovery, believing Austin had not survived. Still, Brian refused to give up. He spent weeks searching on his own, even after heavy snow forced him to return home in late October. By November, Brian admitted Yellowstone winters made survival unlikely, but he clung to the idea that Austin could have found shelter in an unmarked cabin. In 2025, new recovery plans took shape. Outdoorsman Bill Dose organized a 20-person mission using helicopters, drones with advanced scanning software, dogs, and rope teams. The costs were high, and fundraising was launched to cover expenses. Yellowstone officials planned their own follow-up mission afterward, adding another 20 to 30 searchers. For Austin's father, these efforts brought renewed determination. His son's last words from Eagle Peak still echoed. But after that moment, Austin disappeared into the wilderness, and to this day, no one knows what really happened after. It was 2016, and 34-year-old Chris Fowler was at a turning point in his life. He had recently gone through a divorce described as amicable but still a major change. Around the same time, the company he worked for moved out of state. Chris chose not to follow, leaving him without a job. Instead of being discouraged, he felt energized. For him, this was a chance to reset his life. Chris had always loved the outdoors. Growing up in Ohio, he camped and hiked with his family, especially with his father and stepmother, Sally. His biological mother passed away when he was young, a loss that affected him deeply. But he often found peace in nature. As a child, he dreamed of exploring national parks and long trail systems. Now, with nothing holding him back, he decided it was finally time to pursue his greatest dream, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. The Pacific Crest Trail, or PCT, stretches over 2,600 miles from the Mexican border in California to the Canadian border in Washington. It takes more than 5 months to finish and pushes hikers through deserts, mountains, forests, and dangerous conditions. Chris was prepared. He was experienced, skilled in camping, and excited to take on the challenge. In spring 2016, he traveled to Campo, California, the southern start of the trail. A friend began hiking with him, but they soon split up so each could move at their own pace. Chris was an amateur photographer who liked to stop often, while his friend preferred moving quickly. Early on, fellow hikers gave Chris a trail name, Sherpa. In Himalayan culture, Sherpas are mountain guides. For Chris, the name had deep meaning, and he carried it proudly. For months, Chris hiked north, checking in with family every week or two when he reached towns. His stepmother recalled him sounding happy and calm. The trail became more than just a hike. It was his way of finding clarity after his mother's death and recent divorce. By October, Chris had covered over 2,200 miles. He had crossed California and Oregon, now entering Washington. He was less than 400 miles from Canada. On October 12th, he reached Packwood, Washington, near White Pass. After resting, he arranged a ride to the Cracker Barrel store at White Pass, a small shop serving hikers and skiers. Witnesses saw him there that morning. Records show he tried calling his father, but the call went to voicemail. That was the last confirmed sign of him. At that same time, a massive storm was approaching. Typhoon Songda was moving into the Pacific Northwest, bringing freezing temperatures, rain, sleet, and snow. Many hikers debated waiting it out. Whether Chris chose to continue or not remains unclear. What is known is that after October 12th, his phone never turned on again. By October 21st, with no word from Chris, his family reported him missing. Search and rescue teams quickly began covering the White Pass area and the Goat Rocks Wilderness, one of the most dangerous sections of the PCT. Helicopters and volunteers searched for weeks. Nothing was found. No gear, no clothes, no trace at all. 2 hunters later claimed they saw him near Blowout Mountain East, about 60 miles north of White Pass. If true, Chris had made progress, but doubts later arose about the sighting's accuracy. Theories formed. Many believe Chris got caught in the storm and suffered from exposure. Others suggest he fell on the steep cliffs of Goat Rocks. Some speculate he may have chosen to vanish and start fresh, but those close to him doubt it. He was excited to finish the trail and reconnect with family. Theories about foul play or wild animals surfaced, but no evidence supported them. Chris stood about 6 feet tall, with blonde hair, blue eyes, a beard, and a black backpack. He was last seen on October 12, 2016. His father, Eric, led major search efforts until his death a year later, while battling cancer. In his memory, the Fowler O'Sullivan Foundation was created to help search for missing hikers. Today, Chris Fowler's case remains unsolved. He was less than 400 miles from completing his dream when he vanished into the wilderness. It was December 1, 1946, in Bennington, Vermont. Paula Jean Weldon, an 18-year-old sophomore at Bennington College, decided to spend the afternoon hiking the Long Trail, a remote hiking route in the area. She expected to be gone only a few hours, but Paula never returned. What followed was one of Vermont's most baffling mysteries, with no trace ever found. Paula was born on October 19, 1928, in Stamford, Connecticut. She was the oldest of 4 daughters to William and Jean Weldon. Her father was an industrial engineer and designer for the Revere Copper and Brass Company. Her mother stayed home to raise Paula and her sisters Steph, Pamela, and Heather. In 1945, Paula graduated from Stamford High and soon enrolled at Bennington College. By her sophomore year, she lived in Dewey House. She enjoyed outdoor activities like hiking, swimming, skating, and biking, but also loved guitar, botany, and square dancing. She was 5 feet 5 inches tall, about 123 pounds, with scars on her knee and eyebrow, plus a vaccination mark on her thigh. That fall, Paula had stayed on campus instead of going home for Thanksgiving. Friends later gave mixed accounts. Some said she seemed down, others said she was cheerful. On December 1st, after working a shift at the college dining hall, she returned to her room and changed for her hike. She wore a red parka with a fur hood, jeans, white sneakers, and a small gold wristwatch. She carried no bag, food, or money, showing she only planned a short trip. Around 2:30 p.m., students saw Paula leave campus toward Route 67A. A gas station worker also saw her run up and down a hill by the entrance before heading off. At about 2:45 p.m., local contractor Louis Knapp gave her a ride along Route 9, dropping her near the Long Trail. Later, hikers saw Paula at Bickford Hollow asking questions about the trail. By 4 p.m., as darkness set in, she walked toward the trail bridge. Some reports placed her further up the trail near Fay Fuller Camp, though never confirmed. Temperatures dropped quickly that night. Paula, dressed lightly, was never seen again. Back on campus, her roommate assumed she went to the library. Concern grew only the next day when Paula still hadn't returned. Authorities were contacted and her father soon arrived in Bennington. Search teams looked first at Everett Cave, a place Paula had once mentioned, but found nothing. Other leads surfaced. A taxi driver claimed he drove a student to the bus station that Sunday. A waitress in Fall River said she saw a girl resembling Paula with a young man around 9:30 p.m. The girl claimed she had lost money and seemed dazed, but neither sighting was confirmed. By December 3rd, a large search was underway. Students, locals, Boy Scouts, and even planes covered the woods. By December 5th, nearly 500 people were involved. They searched as far as Glastonbury Mountain, but nothing was found. Odd reports came in, such as a woodsman hearing a woman scream or servicemen leaving a suitcase in a cabin. A clairvoyant even tried to help. Still, no trace appeared. By December 15th, the search ended. Suspicion later fell on a lumberjack named Fred Gaudette, who gave conflicting stories about his whereabouts. At one point, he even hinted he knew where Paula was buried, though no evidence supported this. The mishandling of Paula's case led to public criticism. Vermont had no state police at the time, and the investigation was disorganized. This failure pushed lawmakers to create the Vermont State Police in 1947. Paula's disappearance became tied to other vanishings around Glastonbury Mountain between 1945 and 1950. These events, along with reports of strange lights and creatures, gave rise to the so-called Bennington Triangle. Theories remain divided. Paula may have died from exposure, left on her own, or been harmed by someone. But no belongings, clothing, or remains were ever found. Paula Jean Weldon stepped onto the long trail that evening in 1946, and then it was as if she disappeared from the earth. Her case is still open nearly 80 years later.